Welcome to Prime Suspects, alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr. I'm your host, Matt Landis. Adam, last week it was fittingly all about Kentucky, but this week let's shift our sights to Ohio, where sportsbettingdime.com reported last Friday that sports betting revenue in 2025 is outpacing revenue in 2024. Through this June, Ohio reported more than $463 million in taxable revenue, an increase of more than $25 million over the first half of 2024. With that in mind, how does Ohio's overall growth year over year reflect what you're seeing in the state, specifically at Prime?
Well, I mean, we're definitely growing. I think the whole market's growing. I mean, it's, what's that? Less than 5%, about 5% growth. I mean, that seems pretty natural, pretty normal, I think, when all this is going through. I don't get too wrapped up in these numbers too much because generally the sports season, even when we've done it for years looking at numbers, June's a perfect example. 7 NBA games in the finals this year, cracking games at that, multiple back and forth, live betting all over the place versus the 5 games last year that three of them were blowouts and, they weren't that exciting. So right there could be June's numbers, very simple and easily explained. But again, this whole industry's growing. We're seeing numbers across the board growing, different states growing, even pulling out that sweepstakes money and that prediction market money and things like that. Imagine if we were calculating all those things into this space, as well as some unregulated money that's outside. These are just numbers. Everybody loves to write a story about different things that they can put in the headlines. But there's growth. I mean, the industry's growing, both regulated and unregulated within the US borders. And that's all we're trying to do. More players playing. We did see a spike around March, April in the number of unique players we have every month, numbers going up. I did look at that and I saw, Prime was about 9th or 10th on the volume side of it with 0 taxable revenue there. I mean, straight off that was 1 or 2 players that had, the favorite to win the series and the NBA and they got paid out. The way, unfortunately, that Ohio worked it out is the bet was placed in May, so that's where the volume goes into, and then the payouts in June, which then shows money exiting, not going in. So, again, there's some underlying factors as to what these numbers really look like and how they sort of produce based on when the seasons end and when they start again. On NBA Finals is a great example. Multiple soccer competitions, tournaments that were based in the US this year. So, as I said, don't get too excited about those numbers.
All right, well, something I think we're all excited about as we pivot from the Buckeye State to the Silver State and from Adam to Joe, BetBash 5 is coming to Las Vegas next week, making this our last episode to discuss it before it begins. Joe, how would you describe your top priorities at this stage heading into the conference? And when all is said and done, what will constitute a successful BetBash 5 experience?
This is going to be a different year for me because, as everybody knows, I stepped back from the front lines at Prime. So in a lot of ways, I'm kind of like a player going. I get to enjoy it that way. I mean, the event that I always look forward to is the speed networking.
Sponsored by Prime Sports this year.
Sponsored by Prime Sports. So I always love that because it gets you out of, your envelope, people that you wouldn't normally get a chance to talk to, or maybe, wouldn't come up to you. And, it by design, it puts them in front of you. I love that part of the event. Different things, rather than looking for players this year, although obviously I'm in the tank for BetCris Arizona and for Prime, and will always be trying to push people that way. There's some other things that I'm looking forward to trying to explore. And it's a great time to just really get your ear to the ground with the players, with so much going on both sides of the counter. And then with our friends in government, which leads to the fact that I was not going to be on either the panels or in the seminars. Now I'm in both the panels and the seminars. In addition to that live broadcast of Props and Hops with our boy Matt Landis. And I hear there's an extra special appearance by Yingling Lager slated for that broadcast as well.
Spoiler alert.
Yep. So between all that and, of course, the fact that I always have the front banquette at Saginaw's Diner when I'm not on the floor at the show. Don't anybody try and get there because they will throw you out. That is my table along with Adam. I'm really looking forward to it. And, of course, a lot of friends who are going to be going into the Sports Hall of Fame this year. Really looking forward to seeing like Jeff and Paris get inducted. I think that's going to be great. And then always the best view in Vegas atop the Legacy Club bar. So feel free to walk up and buy me an Irish whiskey, guys.
And Adam, as Joe outlined, it's going to be quite the full week. So how would you describe your biggest plans and barometers for a successful BetBash?
Well, yeah, this year we have two of our clients, well, and ourselves, I guess, with BetCris Arizona sponsoring the speed networking and the scavenger hunt. There's a lot of pacing at this event. You got to, those late nights end up late nights. If you have one too many too early, the whole week gets wiped out. So I know Wednesday's fairly heavy evening with the props and hops, and then Unabated, I think, has something after that. So my Wednesday night's definitely full. So I plan to come in, take it easy. Definitely when I did see the inductees of the Hall of Fame, I do have a dog in the fight this year with, I guess, Spiro going in there. So, sweat the game, not the payout. So I haven't seen him for probably a decade or more. So, catching up with him will be sort of good. Yeah, I mean, it's just a week to go and listen to the players complain and bitch and moan about everything that the operators aren't doing, which I'm fully aware of and have lived on that side of the fence for as many years as I've lived on the other side of the fence. So, it's always some interesting conversations. Obviously, we have Arizona now, so it's a 25-minute drive down to exit 2 from the circus. So anyone looking to sign up and maybe get a bonus here and there and go for a drive during the day to get some bets on, we'll set that up as well. But it's always a good week catching up with different personalities and having a drink with everyone at the end of the night.
And beyond all the ground you guys have laid so far, another key agenda item for many BetBash attendees, present company included, registering for Circus acclaimed NFL contests. And guys, we're not the only ones gearing up for football season. Per Jeff Edelstein of ingame.com, ESPN Bet is launching a fan center, merging fantasy and betting to create a more seamless wagering experience for millions of fantasy football players. Adam, want to come to you first here. ESPN Bet has arguably fumbled the ball so far. Joe might say you can't even argue whether or not they've fumbled the ball so far when it comes to the integration of betting content into its core media assets and vice versa. And at first glance, Fan Center might finally deliver a personalized experience to ESPN Bet app users that could be worthwhile, especially with the integration of fantasy rosters. So based on what you're seeing from the announcement, do you think that maybe they've finally gotten it right going into the upcoming football season? And if so, what can this all do to possibly help save the fledgling Penn-ESPN partnership?
Well, you'd hope that they finally got one right. I mean, as you say, at first glance, it looks like they've finally taken two of their assets and put them together in a manner that, suits both the fantasy player and the sports bettor. I mean, they've spent billions of dollars on multiple, what we call mistakes, but maybe they're coming out the other side. They are one stock price that I generally do watch on a day or every other day because it's been sort of fun getting in and out of that thing as they've gone up and down and all over the place. But hopefully it means, they can try and execute something in the space because they're non-existent right now. I mean, everything I hear about ESPN Bet is a horrible app. It's a horrible experience. It's horrible this, horrible that. And they should be able to be competitive just as a Fanatics. I mean, Fanatics seem to be sort of moving up into that sort of third or fourth place where Bet365 isn't in those states and whatnot. And they should have all the tools and more than a Fanatics. So hopefully they get this one right and they pick up some market share, but who knows? I mean, right now we've only just seen some mock-ups and a few things like that. I guess it launches next month or later this month now that we're in August, but good luck to them.
And Joe, I have another ESPN news item to run by you. But first, since I alluded to your comments on previous episodes when it comes to ESPN Bet attempting to integrate into the larger ESPN ecosystem, what are your initial takeaways from the Fan Center announcement?
I mean, even a broken watch is right twice a day, right? As Adam said, they've got to eventually get something right. And at least from a direction, seems like great. Finally, you guys are going to leverage the value that ESPN has and all their other assets. The problem is the only thing that we've seen about it right now is a fairly florid statement and a 45-second video. And it's a bit like judging the quality of a video game based on the cutscenes that they release in the run-up. So can't really tell anything. Product certainly isn't live right now. And if there's one thing that ESPN has shown in the past, and I mean their long history, is that when it comes to executing on stuff, they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. I'm not cheerleading against them. Obviously, they're being judged harshly right now, in my estimation, because of history. But at the same time, ESPN, they're in a whole different world of hurt besides just what's going on with ESPN Bet, which I guess we're going to get into here in a second. And it's just a changing nature of sports content right now that this deal, it's kind of an imperative for them, because probably the ESPN brand and just the notion of how ESPN has been a broadcaster of sports, one questions whether that model is even a valid model for where we are in the world in the 21st century.
And speaking of the current state of affairs and what things could look like in the not too distant future, the worldwide leader isn't stopping at Fan Center. Joe, let's get into that next bit. The Athletic reporting the NFL and ESPN reached a blockbuster agreement, placing many of the league's top media holdings with the sports network in exchange for equity in ESPN that's potentially worth billions, which could include deeper integration of betting content into NFL assets. It's reported the deal will be announced during Disney's earnings call this Wednesday, and assuming that reports are confirmed on the earnings call, it's going to be a landmark deal. So what's your initial take on the reported deal, and specifically that potential for further integration of betting content into NFL-owned assets?
Well, first, regarding betting content, since nothing has been said by either company, it's just pure speculation by all of us talking heads on it. One imagines that would be a huge opportunity, but only if they really do have a successful product to integrate with. Regarding, the deal itself, I do think it's interesting that the NFL is trying to bring itself that tight to one of its broadcasters, having come from the era when there was two networks, you had CBS had the AFC or the AFL, and NBC had the National League, and geez, I'm really screwing up the term, NFC versus AFC, to where we are now in the world, where like everybody's got a piece, you have Fox, you got NBC, you got Disney through ABC and ESPN, you got Amazon, everybody's getting a piece of the broadcast pie. So it does seem really interesting that now the NFL is going to go in and get a chunk of equity out of Disney to get part of ESPN. It's really a weird deal. What does that do to the current broadcast product? I found it really convenient over the last couple of years to just be able to watch every goddamn game on my YouTube TV app on my phone. What does that do to the world? But like I said before, this is at a time when ESPN is trying to find its way in the world. Everybody's cutting the cable. I haven't had a cable or a satellite feed for any of my TVs now for going on like 7 years. Everything's Roku in the house, everything's smart TV in the house, all the cable cutting that's happening, everything that's happening on everybody's mobile devices. So it's kind of weird that the NFL is kind of going to where people were instead of where people are, or where they're going, getting ahead of them. So, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. It'll also be interesting to see, because this particular transaction is going to require regulatory approval from the federal government, where they're going to run into our 47th president, who was famously jilted by the NFL back in 2015 when he wanted to buy the Buffalo Bills. Imagine how different the world would be today if President Trump had been the owner of the Buffalo Bills. Would he have ever even taken the time to run for president? But he's not exactly had the warmest relationship with the NFL, and he certainly doesn't have warm relationships with media companies. So how that might factor into all of this, that'll be really interesting to see, but it's certainly not a straight shot from here to there.
Lot to be unpacked in the weeks and months to come when it comes to all of this. For the time being, we'll go ahead and shift gears from ESPN Bet to DraftKings, kicking off a dual look at the future of prop betting. Adam, DraftKings has announced the launch of its early exit program, seeking to address the new trend of bettors calling for refunded wagers when players exit games early due to injury. Under the program, DraftKings will give cash credit to players under specified circumstances in line with the Fanatics Fair Play program. Do you think this is a negative that will only further condition American bettors to expect compensation? Or could it perhaps be more of a positive, customer-friendly enhancement that could set a new standard across the market?
I imagine it'll come out as a positive for the average bettor. They'll see these things, it'll happen to them once, and they'll think that, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. They're not going to, will they do less market shopping? There was one example in one of the articles that DraftKings had plus 310, Fanatics plus 320, and FanDuel plus 350. But, you had an early exit sort of policy on those cheaper prices. Yes, it's just another calculation into should you take the 350 over the 310 based on someone coming out before the first inning or the first rounding goal for any of those things. My first question is are they still paying out the winners and then giving back the losers? It sounds like that's the case. It seems like that's what Fanatics did over the period of time where they've given back $8 million or something. I presume also cash credits. Is it that they're giving you the cash back, or is it a free bet kind of amount that you can reinvest into something else? Unfortunately, and while, you'll have the hardcore old timers and that saying a bet's a bet and all those kind of things, which, is always the side that I'm on when it comes to someone complaining that such and such gave me back my money, and you bet. I mean, this is an adult's game. You've invested your money. Your guy tripped over the step as he come out of the dugout, stiff shit. But unfortunately, with the American market, this is going to be seen as a positive, and maybe it just ends up being something that gets expanded. Tennis has always been a big sport where the rules have varied a lot. It used to be when a ball was served, that was it, bet on. Then they went to first set, then they went to full match, then they went back to first set. And now there's, 150 sports books with 4 different rules when a tennis match becomes official. So unfortunately, this is just something that's going to enter the recreational space. I'm sure there's some players that will not get this, others that do. I saw one comment of, is this part of their $9.95 subscription, that this becomes part of what you get access to as well? There's a whole heap of things, but I'm not going to be the old stiff here saying, you lose your bet, fuck off. No, this is just where culture's going with the average recreational bettor. Unfortunately, the expectations are going to be there. We will not be getting any fair play or early exit or whatever else at any brand that I'm able to convince not to do this. But there's other ways to come up with gimmicks and things like that. But this one, you won't see it on my doorstep.
So can I just jump in here and say, I also am not going to be the old fart, but I am going to be a little bit philosophical. And, I'm a parent. I've raised children that are pains in the ass and needy. And when they ask for something and I eventually give in to them, are they thankful and grateful for that? No, they try and push their advantage. And philosophically, it's like, okay, well, where is this going to end? Because you could make an argument that, okay, well, if canceling a market on an injured player because him sustaining the injury was serious enough, it wasn't fair or whatever like that. Well, okay, well, how does that affect the main markets, like the sides and the totals and all that? You can see people eventually that they're going to push. I don't know that they'll be successful, but this creates unnecessary pressure by constantly catering to people on stuff like this to gain some sort of marketing advantage. But they are going to create pressure on their main markets. If it's some like Jamoke that goes down, okay, fine. Some guy who's like a special teams player or the 7th guy off the bench in an NBA game, great. But if LeBron James goes down in a game or Jalen Hurts goes down in a game or something like that, one of players going to say, why don't you refund my spread bet or my money line bet or my total bet? Because obviously that's the team's best player. They got hurt. You just refund the prop on them. I want that back. And so, again, I get it. I understand why they're doing it, especially for the type of bettor that has come in over the course of the last 5 to 8 years. But the bettors are not going to say thank you very much and stop there. They're just going to continue to push this and see how far they can take it.
Well, from bettors pressing their edges to politicians looking to do the same, Joe, let's stick with you and get into part 2 of our dual look at prop betting's future. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine has formally asked the Ohio Casino Control Commission to consider a complete ban on prop bets in the state. What do you see as the likelihood of this passing? And if it does, what impact do you think it could have on the Ohio market?
I think once we get out from under the media rage surrounding the shitty and dishonest Cleveland Guardians bullpen and their point shaving practices or their spot fixing practices, hopefully logic and reason will win out, because we're all talking about how much of our broadcast just tonight has been centered around prop bets and, ESPN and how they're going to integrate their fantasy app and audience with their sports betting app. This is where the world is at right now. Americans like betting on individual players. Globally, there's more people who follow players than follow teams. This is the way the world is going. To suggest that, okay, well, we're just going to wind back the clock and we're going to go back to main markets that you can only bet pre-game, that's sticking your head in the sand. It's just wishful thinking, okay? And I don't mean that in any other sense other than the public, they just won't accept it. If they don't get it from the law-abiding, rule-abiding, regulated and licensed sports books, they're going to go elsewhere, and those other shops will be happy to give it to them. So Governor DeWine has been very serious, has been very good up until about the last year when it came to sports betting as a state. And he just seems to be trying to go out with a bang, and it makes him seem unserious. Anybody who embraces this, they just don't seem to really understand what the problem is. The problem in this scenario are dishonest players. It's not that there's a product that tempts them, okay? It's because you have players that are dishonest. So eliminating that product isn't just going to suddenly make honest players. They're going to find other ways. So what really needs to happen here is tighter policing of the employees of the professional leagues. Because in the end, who's the money come out of? It's not coming out of the state. It's coming out of us. It's coming out of sports books. So they're just punishing the victim now here too. This doesn't hold up logically in any enforcement sense. So I just wish, of course, this is going to get batted back and forth by the media and, by that percentage of people who think that we've, unleashed a social ill. But in the end, the only reasonable way to address this problem is the way that we have it out in the open, where we can see it, where regulators can monitor it, where the licensed sports books will monitor it. And when we see stuff that's, questionable, we're reporting it. Do anything other than that, you're inviting cheating rather than discouraging cheating.
And Adam, let's bring you back in for a last word, if Joe will allow it. Coming full circle with you speaking to the state of play at Ohio on this episode, what are your thoughts on the proposed prop ban?
For me, micro betting, spot fixing, you've got to look at they caught it. It's impressive with what's in place. I mean, this is what regulated betting is about. You see all the bets. You can see that a certain prop bet that doesn't, get more than $100 through 10 sports books suddenly gets 10,000. You can dig into that. You can take a look. You can speak to the players and whatnot. They're all under, within their contracts and their agreements within the leagues now. They're all got, not allowed to bet or different rules of engagement through different sports. I read something where, someone said the evidence of prop betting in Ohio is harming athletics is reaching critical mass. That's laughable. Go back 20 years to tennis. Go back 25 years to cricket. Go back to these pre-regulated, non-regulated, unregulated, whatever it is. That's where shit happens. And that's where they don't get to see the bets. There's no regulators having oversight or anything like this. This is what's meant to happen. You regulate the events. You see the bets. You dig into the data. We're in a big data world now. You can go and you can find certain aspects. These pitches through thousands and thousands of pitches, and they did this 2 or 3 times, yet they found it. This is the whole purpose of regulated betting. So when they come out and doesn't the governor have other things to do than worry about Cleveland Guardians throwing a ball or a strike here? The regulators have better things to do than micromanage this stuff. You have partners. You have partners in the industry. Use them. This is the result. We've had multiple NBA, multiple MLB. This is what it's all about, regulating so there's oversight and being able to see what's actually happening under the hood, then banning it, get going back, because these bets don't go away. They're in a sweepstakes, they're in a prediction market, they're in the offshore, they're in Asia, they're in Africa, this is what you're meant to be doing. So get the information, see the result, work out what to do with it. Go after the players, do whatever needs to be done, make examples of them. But this is the name of the game. You're doing it right. Don't go shitting the bed and screwing it up now.
And on that note, This will be episode number 1 by my count out of 93 that Adam gets in that last word prior to the sign off. So on that novel note, we will go ahead and wrap up as Joe tries to jump back in facetiously. To the audience, thanks as always for tuning in. Come say hi and enjoy a beer and or an Irish whiskey with us if you'll be at BetBash next week. And from FaceTime in Vegas to listening time on your podcast platform of choice, we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at @PrimeSuspects_, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.